Working as a herd. This week, we dive into Edmonton Global's new strategic plan and find out how shareholders are feeling about the organization these days.
Plus, we bring you an update on Gibbons, the best little town in the Northeast.
Hi, I'm Mac.
I'm Stephanie.
And we're
Speaking Municipally.
Welcome back to Speaking Municipally, episode 367.
Ooh, stop.
I promised my daughter I would give her a shout out on the podcast. Okay. So there we are. Yeah.
Never mind. Love that.
I know. I'm generally down with the 6-7. I feel like it's maybe past. I had the opportunity the other day to talk to a 12-year-old and she said, yeah, it's not cool anymore. So
okay. Well, that's when you need to start doing it to like embarrass the kids. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Make them cringe.
100%. Yeah. I was waiting for this episode partly for that little shout out to my kid, but also because it's been a while. Feels like with our summer publishing break and other things. We had some pre-recorded interviews that we brought you. Hopefully you enjoyed all of those. But we're back now into the swing of things. We've got our regular remit of publications out every day, every week, and we're getting back out into the world. And last night, you and I were both out in the world. We're recording this on Thursday, August 13th. And so Wednesday night, we got drenched.
Oh, God. Yeah, it was rough. My shoes were like sponges.
So this was for the Edmonton Pit Tour, which you co-hosted.
Yes, it was great. It was super fun. We did a little tour through Wequentuin, hit some of the great pits. I think we got really poured on for a little bit, but then it let up towards the end. And I just it was really fun and silly, which I think that municipal politics can often be. But it was also, I hope, educational, so we could learn a bit more about why these pits exist and what can be done about them. We had this panel at the end. Thank you to Eric Slatter from Omada Commercial, to Panita McBrien, who's now with Alloy Strategies, but of course she's the former CEO of the Downtown Business Association, and also Ward Métis Councillor Ashley Salvador. Lots of great insights shared on these pits. And we also were able to do a bit of a historical designation. If you go past on the bike lane, the 102F bike lane, or you're just walking past the Jameson pit, keep your eyes peeled for that new plaque that we got. But yeah, it was very fun. And thank you to everyone for coming out, even and sticking around through the rain. We were so surprised that people stuck around, but no, we ain't made of sugar.
That's right. So many people could see this large group of people walking around and they were slowing down in their cars or walking by and they're like, what's going on? Who are all these awesome people learning about some important municipal topics? It was a perfect blend of a bit of humor, a bit of fun, a bit of snark, and some education, like you said. So we're going to bring you more from the Wequentuin Pit Tour maybe next week in a bonus episode. We got to figure that out still, but Stephanie crushed it, and we want to share that with all of you as well.
Yeah, it was super fun. If you didn't get tickets because they did sell out, you can experience it virtually. And hopefully drier
than all of us. Yeah. You had to pay for the privilege to get soaked. Okay. This episode, we're going to talk not about pits, though. We're going to talk about the region and what's going on in the region. Before we do that, we're going to read you an ad, and this week, it's ours.
Yeah. This episode is brought to you by Taproot Edmonton's Food Roundup. Published every Tuesday morning, the Food Roundup is an email newsletter that provides you with the latest openings, closings, headlines, and happenings in the world of food across the Edmonton region. It's a great way to find out about new restaurants, what local food entrepreneurs are doing, and fun food-related events you can check out. If you don't already, subscribe for free to get the Food Roundup delivered straight to your inbox. And if you're looking to reach the kind of people who read the Food Roundup, and you should because they're awesome, then get in touch with Mac to discuss sponsorship and advertising opportunities. Learn more at taprootedmonton.ca.
And my email is mac, M-A-C-K, at taprootedmonton.ca. If you want to get your brand into the Food Roundup, please reach out. We'd love to work with you. Mm-hmm. Okay, before we get to our interview this week, which I'm really excited about, I first wanted to get an update from you, Stephanie, on Gibbons. So the last time we talked about Gibbons on the podcast, the town was having financial difficulties. There was discussion about whether or not it would be subsumed into the region. Mm-hmm. And there was a toilet paper crisis. They couldn't afford toilet paper for the arena. It was really bad. You've been paying attention to this. You've done a lot of reporting about this. What's happened since then? What should our listeners know about where Gibbons is at now?
Yeah, this was one of those stories that I could not look away from. It was every week there was something new happening. So I'll try to hit all the highlights here. I think we last talked in February or March about this, but in March, Sturgeon County raised some issues with the viability review process because most of the time when these things are done, like they're actually relatively common. When I wrote this story, there was 4 underway. And there were 4 others completed in 2025. So it happens pretty often, but all of those municipalities were fewer than 500 people. And Gibbons was 3,200. So obviously quite a bit bigger. And if the county had absorbed Gibbons, it would have been eligible for some money from the province, but that amount is calculated based on population and it caps out at 500 people. The county would have received $450,000 to, do some administration stuff, and it could also receive up to $1.5 million to ensure critical infrastructure can continue operating during the transition. But basically, the county was like, that's not going to be enough for a town or for a to-be hamlet as large as Gibbons.
So that was in March, and this viability review took place over the next several months?
Yeah, so it was an expedited review process just because of the urgency and the sort of the sudden revelation of the financial crisis. Because, like, when Wabamun dissolved to become a part of Parkland County, it was a bit different because, TransAlta left the town, which led to a more gradual decline in reserve funds and service quality. And then residents started campaigning for this change, and then eventually, out of the 272 residents who voted, again, much smaller, 89% voted. So it's just kind of, that one was a bit more of like a foregone conclusion in a way. But this one, the Gibbons one, was like, oh, dang, this is a big problem that we got to get to.
All right, so they expedited this viability review. That was going on. They were still facing this financial crisis, and it sounds like things were getting even messier.
Yeah, so this was one of those examples. It was definitely out of Parks and Rec, and it was one of those examples where you can tell, and I say this with so much love, that the people that are on the council in Gibbons are not trained career politicians because of their method of communication. I'll say that much, because they released a letter calling for a more mature approach to regional collaboration as it looked for ways to solve its financial crisis. So they sent this letter to the council of Sturgeon County, and they thanked the county for the work done so far, but then they said that they're no longer pursuing some of the shared services that would have helped them, solve this crisis. He said, leadership means recognizing when negotiations are not progressing toward a fair or sustainable outcome. After careful review, it became clear that the current proposals may have led to increased costs for Gibbons residents and potential impacts on our local service levels. So basically they're saying, you're offering us help, but we don't want it. Bold thing to be saying, I think.
That was Gibbons Mayor Rick Henderson to Sturgeon County making those comments about increased costs for Gibbon residents. And then in May, they did get increased costs.
Yeah, so they approved their 2026 operating and capital budgets, which required an 8.2 tax increase, which here in Edmonton, that's like kind of normal, but over in the smaller municipalities, that's quite large.
That's big, yeah.
To get to this position where it was going to be bigger though, and to make it smaller, they implemented significant cost reductions. They made cuts to staffing and services. They reported about $1.2 million in salary savings and the elimination of about 14 positions, along with other, reductions to operational spending.
So this viability review is going on. They're trying to find ways to cut costs in the interim. And then we got the results of the report in June, right?
Yes. So it kind of revealed a bit of how they got to this financial crisis. And let's just say there's a lot of things that led to it. Expenses in the town of Gibbons increased more than twice as fast as its revenue did from 2020 to 2024. In most years, the town did not have money set aside for unexpected costs. In 2024, it didn't generate enough income to cover day-to-day services. So this report came out and said that the town would have to raise taxes by 40% if it remained a town and by 30% if it joined Sturgeon County.
Those are astronomical numbers. How did council respond to those?
They called it garbage, and they said, I'm peed off, but the actual word, they hated this report, and they said it was fear-mongering, and they said it was all wrong because it didn't take, which to be fair, it did not take into account, because when they were doing the review, they hadn't yet approved their budget yet that we talked about with the 8.2% tax increase and all those cuts. So to be fair, it was using outdated information. But I mean, still, what I said about how it got to the position, that is still true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then I understand the Gibbons Council also started questioning the county's financial position, which is pretty rich, I think, when you're, on the edge of viability to be saying to your larger neighbor, like, what about you guys?
No, literally, they were like, I know we're going bankrupt, but like, how much do you spend, Sturgeon County? They were the lip on them, the lip on them. They were asking for more information about the county's financial position. They were asking how much tax revenue is generated by the industrial land in the county, how it's used, what the average tax burden is on a Sturgeon County home versus a Gibbons home, detailed costs of Sturgeon County services, and the salaries for Sturgeon County councilors. So again, it's a bit rich coming from Gibbons.
And their big argument, I think, was just that they are in the heartland or they are close to the heartland, but they don't benefit from all of that. The tax revenue from that goes to Sturgeon County, but they still have to, deal with some of the implications of that. And, calling their bigger neighbor into question is one of the tactics maybe to try to dig in on that point a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. So the viability review report did say outright that Gibbons had said they were considering pursuing annexation of that county land that forms part of the heartland. But a key principle of annexation that the province has for your reasoning that you're allowed to have behind annexation, it cannot be a tax initiative. So that was dead in the water.
So all this led to Gibbons residents having the opportunity to vote, right, on whether or not they should remain a town or pursue becoming a hamlet with inside Sturgeon County.
Yeah, so in the end, residents did vote, drum roll please, to remain a town. But it wasn't like a slam dunk like the Wabamun one was. That Wabamun was 89% voted to dissolve. In Gibbons, it was a 68.5% voted in a plebiscite to keep the municipality as a town. And that was 937 valid ballots were cast, representing only 49% of the electorate. So half the town didn't even vote, which is crazy.
So,
but anyways.
Of the half that did vote, almost 3/4, a little over 2/3 said,
Yeah.
we want to remain a town.
Yeah.
So what's next then? Because they remain a town for now, I guess, but the financial problem hasn't gone away.
So municipalities that undergo a viability review are required to follow several directives from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. They basically have to address all the items on the legislative compliance check that I mentioned and develop a long-term financial recovery plan. There were a couple other little changes in there that they recommend. And to be fair, again, Gibbons is definitely already working on a lot of this. But, this is a slow process that you can't really fully get through in a few months.
So we wanted to bring you this update, partly because Stephanie's done some great reporting over the last several months on this, and we'll link to all of the stories in the show notes so you can go and read some of those if you like, but also because in this interview, you're going to hear a lot of talk about regional collaboration and how municipalities aren't really competing with one another, we're competing with international destinations. And yet we have an example here of two municipalities, one of which is still a member of Edmonton Global, that being Gibbons, and one of which is not, Sturgeon County, kind of competing in some ways for the tax revenue that comes from some of these big projects that end up in the industrial heartland, for instance. That also just calls into question a little bit this idea that all of the mayors in the region actually do get along and want to participate with one another, because there was that snark back and forth that you talked about between the two, but also this ended up costing Sturgeon County something, not just time, right?
Yeah, because they had to prepare all of these, they called them provincial workbooks about their own financial status, and then what it would be if they had to absorb Gibbons. And, every municipality saying they're so strapped for cash, they can't handle this. And it was a completely unplanned expense for Sturgeon County. So the Sturgeon County Mayor, Lana Schnottu, was talking about how maybe this whole process should be reevaluated.
Well, they did wish Gibbons success and said they remain committed to maintaining a productive and respectful relationship with the town. So that's the official line. We'll see how that plays out.
It's like when you're dating someone and you need to break up with them and you just go, I wish you the best. I think you're a great person.
A little bit. Okay, with all that in mind, keep some of those ideas in mind as we get into our interview. So this week, we're very excited to talk to Daryn Edgar, who's the new CEO of Edmonton Global. She took over in October 2025. And Mayor Jeff Acker of Spruce Grove, who's been a longtime member as a former vice chair of the Edmonton Global shareholders group. So here is my conversation with Daryn Edgar and Mayor Jeff Acker about Edmonton Global, what the organization looks like today, and where it's all going. Daryn, Mayor Acker, welcome to Speaking Municipally.
Thank you for having us.
Hi, thank you very much.
All right, Daryn, let's start with you. We're coming up on your first anniversary as the CEO of Edmonton Global. I think it's been about 10 months since you took over the role. How has it been? How's the first 10 months feeling? How is that anniversary feeling to you?
It's been a fast 10 months. It really, when I look back upon sort of what I thought I was getting into at the beginning, what it became, and where things have gone, it's really, there's been so many surprises and exciting things that have happened along the way that I really couldn't have anticipated how some things would have gone, but it's been a great 10 months.
I want to ask you more about the surprises, but first I'd like to welcome Mayor Jeff Ackers, Mayor of City of Spruce Grove. You are also on the shareholder group for Edmonton Global. You've been the vice chair of that group in the past. Tell us a little bit about what the shareholder group is and your role with Edmonton Global.
Well, thank you so much for having us. And as a shareholder, our job is to bring the perspective from municipalities, because this organization was created through the, Capital Region Board back in the day and the EMRB later, to fundamentally find ways that we can currently reach out to on our own, economic development groups to that foreign direct investment. So our role is at the governance level, setting those, strategic kind of guideposts for Daryn and her team and the board. And then to ensure that there's accountability and reporting back. One of the things that we've been talking about for probably the last 5 years is that ROI, and fundamentally we all understand economic development is not a today's solution. It's a long-term commitment, and you got to do a whole bunch of legwork to get to the point where we're currently at. And I think, just some of the recent announcements are showcasing, the wise investment that this region put into Edmonton Global. So our job is to oversee, to provide direction, provide that perspective from the municipal lens, and to really try and, keep the entire region growing and moving forward.
I've got several questions about deals and ROI, so I'm going to come back to that. But I think the question a lot of people are wondering about right now is, are the shareholders happy? So Edmonton Global's down to 9 from the original, I think it was 13 municipalities. And Leduc County has also said they might be planning to leave, so it could go to 8. We've been reporting on Gibbons, which looks like it will remain a town, but might have not been a municipality here. So from the shareholder perspective, Mayor Acker, are the shareholders, the municipalities, are they happy with where things are at for Edmonton Global?
I think we're relieved. I think it's been a heavy lifting time for the last, probably since 2023. And that's when we saw the economy do a downturn, municipalities looking with finite funding of where they need to put that in place. But I think we're in a good place. I think bringing Daryn on board and the changes we've done organizationally, and just to refocus what our intentions are and to refocus the organization on what we're actually hunting for. Those that are still at the table are, I think, relieved, happy to be there. Still, I would say the entire region still believes in regionalism fundamentally. I think their individual decisions based on municipals' priorities and funding. But yeah, I think we are in a good place right now, a really good place.
When you say relieved, kind of implies relief from something. Like what is the relief about, do you think, for the remaining municipalities?
Well, there's a lot of distraction over the last 2 years, and Daryn kind of came into that when she came on board. It was just trying to figure out where we're going. And there was different perspectives on Edmonton Global, different perspectives on what our target sector should be. It was a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of work on not only the shareholders, but also on the board and the organization. So the relief is just, I think we've gotten past that. We have identified some huge opportunities. We've streamlined the organization. We have way better accountability and reporting. And then I think as a shareholder, we have good information now to share with our councils, our communities, and that we have a plan for the future.
What's your take, Daryn? You took on the job knowing that 5 municipalities had voted to leave, and there was, I think it's fair to say, some rocky relations between the organization and the shareholders. You kind of walked into that, taking on this new role. What's your assessment of where things were in October 2025 and where they are today?
Where you began this question was sort of, are they happy? And I'd align with a lot of Mayor Acker's comments. But where I began in October was, there's lots of different kinds of happy and there's lots of different kinds of unhappy, specifically for each specific shareholder, what is the happy and the unhappy? And I got to say, I did come into a situation where there was this veil of unhappiness and it was really opaque. And so I kind of began from the people are just people. I'm going to go talk to people. And I spoke with every mayor individually, and I spoke with every CAO individually, and then also, key people in other roles. And they were not negative towards me. Every person was constructive. They were forthcoming about the details and the attributes for their specific region and what ROI meant to them. It's not the same for every region. It's different because every region has different assets. They have different credentials. They have different economic positions. And so that activity at the beginning really shaped my personal thinking, but also our direction as an organization going forward. And my sense was with the people I was speaking with is they appreciated the attention to their specific needs. But then as we've moved on into refreshing the shareholder engagement, we're doing it specifically shareholder by shareholder in a common approach, but each shareholder gets their own conversation now rather than treating everybody as a bundle. I think that honors the information that they shared with us in the listening tour that happened in 2025, as well as with the refresh that we undertook after I started, but also it lets them get their assets out in front. It lets them get their assets on the table so that we can at least attempt to do something with them, try and find a home in a bit of a route to market for it. The regional approach is great, and that religion, we're all bought into. I do believe the shareholders are bought into it, and as an organization, we're bought into it. But the mechanics of making that work, go to market, is really where Edmonton Global wants to work harder at getting the mechanics really specifically paid attention to, and that's quite a diligent journey that we're going into, is trying to work out what do each of the shareholders have, shovel ready, go to market ready, or a twinkle in their eye, not ready at all, but let's try to get some awareness for it and understand what that is. Because if we have an awareness of it, we can do something about it. So regionalism is great, but I do think we need to get a better understanding of the individual regions in the region. So that proposition has a hope of getting close to what a shareholder is thinking of for their personal ROI. So happy, are the shareholders happy? Just tying into a comment that Mayor Acker made, I think my interpretation was that veil of unhappiness happened because people couldn't exactly see a way forward, couldn't exactly see some steps that they could undertake. We're trying to create some steps that we can all sign up to. And if we're collaborating, then I think we're happy. The Edmonton Global is happy. I think the shareholders will be happier if they feel like they've got some steps forward. Ultimately, people always feel a little bit better when you're moving with the traffic.
For sure. Yeah. Mayor, I want to come back to you. What give us a tangible example? Like, what has changed for shareholders? Like, what's different about your interactions today versus a couple of years ago? And a lot of that, I think it's fair to say, maybe changed as a result of that shareholder was a listening tour or process that was undertaken. So give us some insight into the shift that's happened from a shareholder's point of view.
Sure. So I think early days, we set up, some key sectors we wanted to target, and then it became very rigid. And then the organization and the board of directors kind of focused on that direction. But meanwhile, we're getting pressures from our communities, from our residents, from our EDO officers that are in our community saying this isn't matching the priorities that council has asked us to do, or we can't attract, it's not on the list of Edmonton Global. So we had a disconnect there, and it was other communities that had the same kind of disconnect. And we really couldn't see, it was a frustrating situation where the shareholders would be bringing this forward, but then it just seemed to fall on deaf ears and nothing really changed. So there'd be still those key sectors that were being targeted, usually really focused on one or two areas of our region, and the rest are feeling like, okay, where's the benefit? What I think has changed now is Daryn's brought in a whole new just a perspective on how to do business. And I really believe just consulting with each of our municipalities, because we're all a little different. We all have our own priorities. We all have our own targets of what we want to build in our communities, whether it's light industrial, heavy industrial, tech. So we really want to be able to funnel that back to Edmonton Global. So when they're out, doing the foreign direct investment conferences and attracting and trying to build that funnel up, that some of what we're looking for is being part of that entire solution. So I think we're seeing that. I think there's a growing confidence on my colleagues across the region that message has been heard. And then we can come back to our councils and our community to say, this is why the investment is smart. Because fundamentally, I think everyone in our region understands the world is more complex. I'm not competing against Stony Plain or Edmonton or St. Albert. We're competing against Denver. We're competing against international locations. And we were having no success trying to do one-offs of municipalities sending off to a convention to try and attract, because we just weren't even on anybody's map.
Yeah.
We've now established, I think, a reputation. We're starting to establish that brand that, fundamentally we got to get them to our region. And once they're in our region, then the municipalities have a great opportunity to compete for that business. So the important part of Edmonton Global is getting them into the region. So it's so vital to have those opportunities that now can be maximized on our EDO groups, and we can sell our land or sell our opportunities, sell the quality of life in our communities. So it's changing that way of thinking. And, I think even through the history of Edmonton Global, sometimes I don't think it was always understood by the shareholders themselves of how this plays in with your local economic development. And it's not a replacement. It's a bunch of tools. It's a whole new opportunity for us to market and sell the assets that we have in our community. So I think we're getting there. I think that understanding's, resonating with councils, resonating with the municipalities. And, I think the targeted approach will really see that local influence now being shared through Edmonton Global.
I want to ask more about return on investment and kind of what you were talking about there, Mayor, about how you explain this to taxpayers. But I think maybe a way to come into this is through some deals. So, for example, the big Meta data center that is now coming to Sturgeon County. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't see Edmonton Global in any of the announcements. Like, it didn't seem like Edmonton Global was instrumental in bringing that deal to the region. It seems like that is exactly the kind of deal that Edmonton Global should bring to the region. Maybe Daryn, we can start with you. When a deal like that happens, how much of that is because of Edmonton Global, whether or not, you're specifically at the announcement or not, what the Mayor Acker's talking about in terms of the broader messaging and people know the region as a thing. They don't know, the individual municipalities.
What often isn't known in the public domain is confidentiality agreements that are signed along the way and the preferences of the deal makers. So that particular deal was sourced in a particular manner that then dictated its path. Edmonton Global, at the time that path was under pursuit, Sturgeon County was a member of Edmonton Global, so certainly there was a level of content interaction. However, the path of that deal took the path that it did, and upon closing, no, Edmonton Global was not part of it, but it was related to the sourcing of the opportunity and the path that it took. And
the provincial focus on data centers, is that what set me? Maybe that's not a great example of a deal, because that is a big focus for the province. I'm sure they cleared the
absolutely
path.
Provincial and federal relationships were involved with that opportunity, and there, as Sturgeon has been quite transparent about sharing with the market some of the attributes that they had to really work pretty hard to impact on that deal to make it successful. They very much worked with partners to make that possible. But on a personal level, we were very supportive of that deal as it progressed for quite a period of time. That one had quite a length of time that it went through to close that deal. Yeah. So certainly in that journey, we're pretty comfortable with the way the announcement happened and the direction that it went, and congratulate Sturgeon. I mean, that it was the work that was done there was great, and they've been very forthcoming about since it's been signed with kind of sharing the background and the details that had been covered by different confidentiality agreements along the way. So it's great to see that type of thing. Now, that deal was foreign direct investment from sort of US to Canada, but there's going to be impacts that do have the potential to fall into our orbit, mainly in the trade area. And that's one of the things at Edmonton Global that we're looking at doing. which I think will be particular interest to our shareholders, which is how do you use foreign direct investment to build businesses in the region? And how do you take the inbound investor and deploy that in a way that builds the trade clusters and the industry organizations in our various regions? It's worth mentioning that a lot has changed at Edmonton Global in the last few months. However, this transition that we're going through is very normal. What got you to here as a startup doesn't get you to there as a growth company, and lots of companies go through that journey. So there was a lot of great success that Edmonton Global achieved in its original incarnation. And we shouldn't discount that just because it was time to change. The leaders and the board members and the municipalities that contributed to the formation of Edmonton Global really got it on the table, and they got it going, and they deserve all the credit for that. And certainly the Sturgeon deal fell into that framework. The deal would not have been possible without some of the content that regional strategy contributed to the story Sturgeon was able to tell.
I mean, I think about deals like that, or, some new petrochemical project in the heartland, and it just comes to me always back to none of those would be appealing to the investors if they weren't adjacent to the city of Edmonton, to 1.3 million people, to Amy, to all the University of Alberta, all the incredible assets that the city of Edmonton brings. Yeah. I think there's a reason it's called Edmonton Global. And I think that underscores what you were talking about, Mayor, about like bring them to the region and then figure out the right place for them to go. Before we move off deals, tell me about Teledyne, Daryn. That was another recent deal and investment. And I think they specifically acknowledged Edmonton Global, right?
The reason that they specifically acknowledged Edmonton Global was the length of time that deal was circa 48 months to close. So, anybody who's sort of in a sales organization, you're always looking at your length of time to close. At Edmonton Global and with the FDI space, the length of time to close is significant. It's longer than even what large enterprise companies go through, because the investment cycles, certainly with respect to infrastructure projects, are very long. They're long business cases. It does take them a long time to find the needle in the haystack of the site that they want. So, Teledyne took 48 months. That's what we've got it sitting in our pipeline. And in that 48 months, a lot of our partners in the region participated. They would have done several inbound missions as well as countless phone calls, and all of our partners supported that along the way.
So, Mayor, back to your comment about return on investment, how are you explaining it to your constituents, to taxpayers in Spruce Grove? You see these big deals coming to parts of the region, maybe not directly benefiting Spruce Grove, but they do in the long run benefit Spruce Grove. How do you convey that message?
Well, 100%. And my common tactic is just sharing that success breeds success. So it's tough because I know some of my colleagues want to see, those deals in their jurisdiction. I want to know what the tax assessment that I gain from this deal. But fundamentally, economic development is a wider space, and we need to look at it in the macro level that the Edmonton region needs to be growing. And as long as we're continuing to grow, invest, and attract, I think we're all going to benefit. And fundamentally in that whole scheme of things is a healthy Edmonton. Edmonton needs to be prosperous. It needs to be growing. It needs to be vibrant. And that's where all our outstanding post-secondaries are. We have a tremendous, post-secondary, contingent in Edmonton with, I think, 120,000 students. So highly intelligent, highly, young, vibrant workforce. These are the essences of what we're trying to market out to the international place. And cost of living is still good. And fundamentally at the municipal side, we're selling the quality of life.
Yeah.
So that's why it's all a little different. And I think when you look at the Edmonton region, we have incredible rural and industrial parks. We have vibrant mid-sized cities or a large Edmonton. So we have somewhere for everybody. And if we can, get people just to our doorstep, I'm very confident that we can make those deals. So what I tell my residents is, for the cost of, in Spruce Grove's case, like one really strong employee, we are getting the benefits of an entire region and experts and an incredible board of directors that are marketing this region that we could never do. So it's a no-brainer in Spruce Grove's case for that return on investment. Like the kind of costs that we're paying in the mid-sized cities based on assessment and population, it's like a publication. It's like doing a brochure drop.
Right.
And the value is just incredible. So I keep just talking about the benefits and that we have to invest in. It's long term. You're not going to see an announcement in Spruce Grove next year or a year after, but all of these announcements build up for making our region attractive to all. And it keeps our kids and, it keeps them staying in this region for opportunities. So we need to have a healthy region. And that foreign direct investment is key to all that success.
Shareholders must be paying a larger contribution now as a result of the departures. Is that right?
The 2026 contributions have stayed pretty steady, and we don't really set up the subsequent year's contributions till sort of the later part of the year. So it hasn't varied widely as yet.
Okay. Where is Leduc County at in the process? Are they still leaving? Are you still trying to keep them in?
All of the above.
Okay.
They have signaled their departure, and I wouldn't actually phrase it as trying to keep them in. That's not really the energy behind what we're doing. The energy behind what we're doing with all shareholders is trying to understand their objectives and trying to meet their objectives with them as much as we can, given our mandate and given what our structure is. And we're doing that with Leduc County, but we're also doing that with Edmonton and Spruce Grove and St. Albert, because we're behooved to do that for all of our shareholders. And the value of the whole has to be greater than the sum of the parts. And we do need to be, that's the true spirit of the regionalism, create the collaborative relationship so that I will get as close as we can to your individual objectives in the context of collaborating as a group going to market. So we have conversations with various roles inside each municipality every week, and they are positive conversations. And so, we're moving constructively with everybody, including, a shareholder who may have signaled their departure.
I mean, if that departure does happen, you're down to 8. Let's say, Gibbons does get consumed by the county, you're down to 7. Like, is there a point at which Edmonton Global is no longer feasible? Is there a point at which it just needs to become Edmonton? Like, is that a possibility?
Yeah, I mean, there's sort of the financial version of that and then the operational version of that. The point at which we wouldn't be feasible is the point at which the city of Edmonton no longer wanted to be involved. That would be the point at which we wouldn't be feasible anymore, because it does say Edmonton and Edmonton Global.
Yeah.
So if they no longer wanted to, then we would no longer be feasible. Up until that point, we're pretty much feasible. Where we need to get to, though, is a better level of matchmaking between what we have and what our target markets want. And that's where I think we're going to meet everybody's shared objectives. So get a better understanding of our products at a really granular subsector segment level, and do better matchmaking between those and our routes to markets. So our go-to-market plans are going to be a lot more specific in terms of how we're actually going to market, and then which municipalities, which shareholders uniquely play to those. So that's really the direction of travel that we're going to get to, is really get these things out in market in a way that shows their strengths.
So I understand that. I think that makes sense to find those strengths from the different members around the region. But presumably you can't go to market talking about the 25 sectors that our collective municipalities have a strength in. So what are the, in the new strategy and the new business plan, talks about priority sectors. What are those priority sectors now for Edmonton Global?
So we'll continue to go to market as a brand, which is Edmonton Global. That's the top level of our go-to-market strategy. People have to love the idea of coming to the Edmonton region and building a life here, as well as signal the opportunity that they can grow a business here. And the message needs to be, you can grow your business faster here or prettier here than you could otherwise build it in some other competing region in the world. So that has to be the top story, the top headline story of how we're going to market. And then we start to get into the generic propositions that relate to that, whereas talent, capital, trade, those are sort of the thing, affordability. Those are the things that kind of underpinned the brand story. And we work really closely with all the municipalities around any brand work that they're doing. But obviously the dominant partner there is going to be the city of Edmonton. Getting into the clusters, what you see hanging off our website in terms of the 5 sectors pretty much will remain. The detailed work we're doing now is to look at underneath those sectors, which segments do we have a level of differentiation where our products, our sites, our groupings of industries are differentiated. They're stronger than other, let's say, Canadian cities, or they're stronger than other similar American or foreign cities, so that those are the products where we're going to get recognized a little bit better.
Right.
So that's the lens that we're looking at it through, is what are the core industries that have growth rates that are differentiated here. So it's that engineering, construction, land-based industrial development, energy and renewable related. And then there's a big grab bag of other ones that are core but are of similar levels of growth rates. And then we have a list of emerging sectors where the growth rates exceed the core industries, but nominally they're just not nowhere near as big. And so we're going to make a portfolio of the core ones and a couple bets out of the ones that have high growth rates, but are not nominally anywhere as big as what the core ones will be. And that's how we'll get sort of the traditional measures. Our jobs and tax base is what every economic development organization in the world measures.
Yeah.
Historically, we've stayed very close to capital expenditures as a key measure for our projects. That's still really important, but we're also taking a look at building an aftercare model where for the large accounts we've brought to the region, how do we continue to work with them and build more with them on an ongoing basis and bring more from people who are already committed to the Edmonton region.
Like a polycar expansion or, something like that.
Correct.
What are some of those bets that you talked about? Can you give us some examples?
So here's a really good example. We are continuing to invest in the hydrogen space. This year we participated in sponsoring the hydrogen conference in Edmonton because we believe it's a really important combination of factors for our brand as a region. There's definitely a view on the hydrogen industry, which would cause you to ask whether or not that's a place we should be continuing to invest. We believe that we will tailor our level of investment to suit the change in that you can observe from that place. But the combination of infrastructure, energy, the talent related to it, as well as our relationships with the large organizations that continue to assess that space, means that we'll continue to support that space because it does bring quite a lot of brand value to the region. It brings a lot of accounts to the regions that continue to want to come to that conference. And then it builds visibility for our other events and our other pursuits that are happening for the region as well.
So, Mayor, thinking about Spruce Grove, what are the assets that you bring to the table, and how do you see that fitting into these, these big 5 sectors, and then these bets that Daryn's talking about? How do you connect your Spruce Grove story to that Edmonton Global strategy?
Yeah, so like any good mid-sized cities, we have a nice section of land that is prime for some redevelopment for light industrial. So that's always going to be on our focus. The city has to do a little bit of work of servicing that land to make it market ready for Daryn and her team to start shopping it around. But fundamentally, Spruce Grove brings an incredible workforce that is supportive of all these, like Atchison. A ton of our residents that commute out to Atchison and work in that business park. So we are one of the fastest. I think we're the fastest growing municipality outside of Edmonton in terms of home building, because people choose the quality of life in Spruce Grove. But as we know, people have no problem commuting to Fort Saskatchewan, the heartland, city of Edmonton, downtown, to have their employment. So, the value proposition for Spruce Grove is we are an incredible community to raise your family and to enjoy the quality of life that we provide. And we are in a vibrant enough region that the employment opportunities are endless. You could be white collar in downtown Edmonton. You could be out at one of the industrial parks. You'd be starting a small business of your own. So, the value proposition to Spruce Grove is being part of this thriving region and being part of, Edmonton Global's foreign investment exhibitions and their trips in overseas. I think there's just great opportunities to showcase what we have as a region. And Spruce Grove will see the benefit from that. I think we already do. You can just tell by our housing development.
Yeah. Just back to the sectors. Maybe this is not what you're saying, Mayor, but kind of what I'm hearing is it doesn't matter if it's hydrogen or dual use defense or agriculture or any of that. Any of that investment is good for Spruce Grove. Is that fair?
100%. Yeah, a growth in Parkland County and Atchison is a benefit to Spruce Grove. A growth in the industrial heartland that brings some giant national, international organization the add-ons to that is, organizations are going to be supporting that company. So we'll see a lot of that come and establish a smaller presence here in Spruce Grove. That benefits our tax base. But beyond all that, it's employment opportunities. It's ensuring that our kids don't have to flee this area, this region, this country for employment, and ensuring that we have the wide range, egg services, food production, food upgrading. That's really big in our neck of the woods west of Edmonton. So any of those usually has a huge logistics requirement to get these things either done rail or truck. We have a lot of those organizations that shop up in Spruce Grove. So, the opportunities are just endless. And I think any investment, regardless if it's in, Beaumont or St. Albert or Leduc, it benefits the city of Edmonton, the region, the Edmonton greater region, in so many ways that it's going to be hard to, measure them. And it's, I appreciate Daryn's talking about what are the other kind of key indicators that we want to start measuring besides just the tax assessment, the capital investment. It's really tough to measure it, but for a fact, just intrinsically, common sense would say, yeah, growing communities are a good thing. When they start dying, that's when you have a whole bunch of problems. Yeah. So, if we can get the investment outside of this country, that's going to benefit not only those, made in Alberta companies, allow them to grow, allow them to flourish, create new export opportunities that Edmonton Global can support them with, but it also brings in a whole bunch of new capital investment.
I'll come back to you, Daryn, but do you think that your fellow shareholders feel similarly? Like, isn't one of the reasons that some of these other shareholders left Edmonton Global because they didn't agree that we should go after energy in the heartland? It doesn't benefit me in any way. Do you think the other shareholders have the same view as you do, that any investment, rising tide lifts all boats?
I think there is. Intrinsically, I think this region and those that are sitting in the mayor's chairs believe that. Fundamentally, they believe that. I think that, the misconnection there is just on priorities. That's all it is. And it's also financial. So some communities really in challenging times of finding savings, and, unfortunately, external involvement are one of the first things. So I think municipalities are taking a really close look of, what organizations they're a part of, where they're investing their dollars to ensure it aligns with those local priorities that they were elected to do in their communities.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, I do believe, sitting with the EMRB for a number of years, sitting in Edmonton Global, we have a kind of an ad hoc mayor's group that's continuing to discuss. There's a strong sentiment in the Edmonton region of a strong belief that we need to work together. Our residents don't see boundaries. They go to where they want to shop, where they want to go watch a ball game, take in the arts, where they want to work. Investors don't see borders either. So fundamentally, I think we're in that position as locally elected officials to find ways where we share those alignments, we need to work together. Let's put a multiplier on those investments to benefit what we all need to do, because that's the expectation nowadays. People are they're going to go where they want to go. They're going to take their money where they want to take their money. And in this region, there's so many opportunities. We need to be working together as well to make sure we can facilitate that.
I think our readers and our listeners would just follow up with the question to say, if that's true, if everyone believes in it, why did the EMRB go away? Why did the transit board go away? Why are a bunch of municipalities leaving Edmonton Global? Like, if everyone agrees that we need to work together and it's better when we collaborate, why does it seem like all of the venues for that are gone or slowly dying? I mean, not to suggest that Edmonton Global is slowly dying, but people have left. There's been change, right? What do you say to that?
Down to dollars. Funding.
Dollars.
EMRB went because the province stopped funding it.
Yeah.
So then that would put it on the back pay of our property tax payers. The Transit Commission was a decision by Edmonton. If they're not at the table, nothing can happen. They're the big brother in this entire relationship. And it all comes down to dollars. I don't think it's that belief of collaboration, the belief that working together is the right way to go. But when you're looking at budgets on an annual basis and tax increases, that's usually where, the rubber hits the road. Yeah. It's making those tough decisions. And are they good for the region? No. But in the local perspective, those are some of those tough decisions municipalities have to make. Yeah. But I still believe there is huge support for working collaboratively. And I know I talk to a lot of the regional mayors on a weekly basis, and we support each other in different ways. But yeah, we need to work that way moving forward. And I think that's what our residents expect.
Daryn, I know you wanted to chime in there. What are your thoughts on this regional collaboration?
Well, even for shareholders that are no longer shareholders. Other than the compliance activities, we still operate as though we're in the same region with them. We
You still meet
have
with them?
relationships. Yes, in various team members through various events, various venues. It's not, there's no barrier. And certainly we do think often and on an ongoing basis, we're thinking about our shareholders and how we structure things for them, but we're also thinking about people who used to be shareholders and what's possible, whether that's at a deal level or at a structural level. We do think about that because we are one region. The go-to-market is one region. It's the only go-to-market that's really compelling for this part of the world. And so even the departed shareholders, the fact that they've departed is on some level actually neither here nor there. We still consider them in what we're doing. It's just the reality of the Edmonton region, really.
On that idea that it is the region that you sell, I think you said in one of the posts I saw that strengthening how we tell the region's story to global audiences is a focus. So that sounds like a big challenging thing to do. It sounds like, Edmonton has had this conversation repeatedly since we took down the City of Champions signs. What does that look like to you? What does strengthening the region's story to these international investors look like?
Well, full transparency, like I was part of that era of the City of Champions signs, and there is a small part of me that misses them.
I think we should bring it back. I have a whole future episode about that, but anyway, I digress.
There is definitely a step change happening in sort of the storytelling for the city of Edmonton and the Edmonton region. There's some initiatives that are going on in a few places in the city. Edmonton Global will use the branding and be an active brand participant in what is developed. We won't necessarily own the brand, but we will be a consistent user and shaper of the brand. And we contribute resources and time to those projects so that we stay in alignment. And we're often asked for our view on different brand options, and we provide it. So it is really important. And the journey with an investor begins there. And it begins there before we get into the sector level requirements or the site specific requirements. So we need to live there. We'll use it, we'll wear it, and we'll participate in the creation of it and make sure that there's one face of the city across all our partners when we go to market.
So this is an example in the strategy and in the business plan of something that you will do. Those documents generally talk about the things you're going to do, what you commit to doing or set out to do. What are you saying no to? Like, what is Edmonton Global through this process decided that's not for us, that's offside, or that's just not a priority?
Really good question, because in the middle of the materials that we've been sharing around our refresh strategy and our business plan, we've narrowed our focus of opportunities that we're going to pursue to opportunities that exist in the commercial range of opportunities. So there's lots of projects in the Edmonton region as well as Alberta and Canada that are about making markets for the province and the city and the country. We keep attuned to those projects, but we're going to take our efforts and apply them to places where tax-based jobs and capital expenditures can be generated in the short term. And by the short term, I mean under 60 months, because we do have these very long close cycles. So market-making projects tend to get measured in years, whereas our close cycles are measured in months. So anything that is quite long-term, we're focusing our resources on things that will generate a commercial opportunity in the short term. That doesn't mean that we're going to forget about the market making activities. The example I gave earlier around the hydrogen space, that's still something we're committed to, but we're committed to it on a brand level. We believe that being involved in that space brings general opportunities to the region, and so we're supportive from that point of view. But we're going to focus in on companies that have appetite to invest in the region in order of magnitude months and grow their businesses here in the short term. That's where we're focusing. Now, in future business plans, we can probably expand that range again as we start to grow and achieve success at the next level that we're moving to. But for certainly 2026 and moving into 27, that's where we're focusing.
I mean, that's really interesting. The strategy talks about measuring success through long-term outcomes rather than short-term activity. I appreciate that you've just defined for us, short-term, long-term mean different things maybe in this space than to the layperson or whatever. But how does that measurement of long-term outcomes connect with that idea that we're going to focus on short-term for Edmonton
When we're
Global?
speaking to a public audience, when I say something like 4 years, 5 years, that does sound long term to that audience. So it's that language is sort of speaking to our audience, because that particular document is going out to an audience that would view that length of
As
time as
long-term.
being long term.
Yeah.
When we're internally, when we're managing things, or like if I'm talking to Mayor Acker about something for Spruce Grove, we're using the exact number. We're saying, today we think this one will close, maybe by September 2029. We're saying the exact number. But for
Right.
a public audience, you're putting things in their terms so that you connect to them.
Okay. Mayor, around the shareholder table, what does success look like? How do you know the strategy is working, or how do you know as governors, like, ooh, we got to course correct here? What kinds of things are you paying attention to?
Well, number one is, as long as the shareholders aren't talking about membership or concerns about, the entire organization, that's success.
Yeah.
And I think it's celebrating those successes. It's, ensuring that what we're hearing from our municipalities, whether it's our councils or our active departments, that they're happy, they're getting great value from it. Fundamentally, this is one of the few truly Edmonton region organizations that a lot of us mayors get to sit around. So it's fundamental that we have these opportunities to discuss, and economic development, I think, is on the forefront of every single one of us. And so success is going to be seeing some of those shorter, long-term successes, being able to track it, being a little more accountable, being able to find those key indicators that we can share amongst ourselves, amongst our organizations, amongst our residents, but just visually seeing, the economy growing. And I think when you look at like that Meta announcement, that's a huge investment. It's those types of successes in this region that spurs a whole bunch of other opportunity.
Okay. Last question then for both of you, and I'll start with you, Daryn. Let's say you come back on the show in a year. I hope you both will come back to Speaking Municipally. What would you want to be talking about a year from now? I know that's really short term in this world, but try to put yourself into your second anniversary. What would you want to be talking about? What would be the things that would be on the table?
I want to talk about Edmonton area businesses that have directly benefited from either an investor coming here or an event or an activity that they participated in with Edmonton Global. I want to hear from the people that had a great experience from one of our investments that came here.
Okay. And Mayor, how about you?
Yeah, I just think if we can have some more great announcements of future investments that are filling into this Edmonton region, that's going to be celebration enough. I think it's just, we're in a transition period. We're kind of restructuring, removing around the organization. So it's stability on that front where everyone's comfortable. We're really focused in on, what the strategic decision is, because we need to be really flexible on economic development. International stage is changing like rapidly, and we need to keep up with the speed of business. So it's being flexible enough within the direction that we're strategically providing Daryn as a shareholder to being able for them to capitalize on those opportunities. Understanding it takes some time, but we don't want to put us in a place where we're stuck into some sector areas where we're not getting any traction and we're missing out on some, innovative or thriving new industry. So it's making sure that that excitement is still percolating throughout the region, that people see that value, and we have some outstanding celebrations to take place and announcements.
People love announcements, celebrating those wins, right? Well, thank you both for being so candid and coming and answering all our questions. I think this really helps our audience understand Edmonton Global and the kind of dynamics in the region and everything a little bit better. So very much appreciate your time. Okay, thank you so much.
All right. Very interesting conversation. Mac, what did you take away from it?
Well, it's good to hear from Mayor Acker, one of the shareholders, that things have changed and that they feel much happier about the organization because, as we heard Daryn Edgar say, Edmonton Global is not viable if Edmonton is not part of it, but you have all these other shareholders that you also need to be part of it. Like it's that, combination and those relationships that I think are pretty important. And I've been a fan of the idea of regionalism for a long time. I think it's really true that all of us benefit when we work more collaboratively as a region. And everybody, at the end of the day, really does want growth both population and economic. And so I think it's important for the region that an organization like Edmonton Global exists and is viable. So, there's been a lot of concern in recent years about whether or not that would continue to be the case with all these municipalities choosing to leave. Sounds like, with this new strategic plan and new CEO and new approach to engaging with shareholders, they've turned the corner a little bit. And maybe it is just a maturation of the organization, right? So I leave the interview feeling optimistic about, how Edmonton Global is approaching its work and the benefits that can bring to all of us who live in the region. Okay, well, it's a bit of a long one this week. Thanks for sticking with us. We are back from holiday, and so is City Council, right? So we're going to be talking about what they're up to next week, Stephanie.
Yes, indeed. There's lots of stuff on the agendas this week that we're recording, next week, so we'll have lots to talk about.
I'm Mac.
I'm Stephanie.
I'm Daryn.
I'm Jeff.
And we're
Speaking Municipally.